Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3957. Today's date is March 22, 2026. It's been almost like a night at 10 p.m. and since tomorrow there is a heat warming is announced by the Google. He's saying this thing that within a 5 days the heat would be like a really too much, like almost like a 38 degrees Celsius. Oh my god. Like tomorrow it might get 36, Tuesday 37, Wednesday 38, Thursday 39, Friday 39, Saturday 39, Sunday 39, Monday 40, and Tuesday 49 degrees Celsius. Oh my god. Literally, the summer is actually started. Like I cannot tell you is this thing that in India, like where I live, the summer are so brutal. Like just can't tell you that. And I'm not really hate, but I'm really scared of the summer. Like literally just kind of like a feel like that I'm melting from inside. Like 40 degrees Celsius, boy god, like literally just burn my body. Yeah. And basically just like a very harsh summer here. Whatever. Okay. So let's just jump into the question. Alright? Okay, let's go. Alright. The question is okay. Where do my reform priority risk privileging visible announcement over a deep systematic transformation, and how will I guard against the policy theater in Indian education system? like kind of like a very confusing question, right? Like who the fuck is this thing? Like why is this kind of like a very difficult and very confusing question? Okay, yeah, it is. This question is kind of like a very much confusing question, but still, okay. First of all, what exactly is this question, and why am I asking this question to myself? Okay, this question is about Indian education system. Okay, basically, this thing I wanted to become a education minister of India in the future. Okay, and in the future means like probably maybe decade or multiple decades after. Okay, yeah, probably like a 10-20 year after. Okay, so basically this thing ki I wanted to change so many things. Okay, yeah, but before I kind of like before I wanted to change everything, okay, yeah, I have to be asked this question to myself regarding about Indian education system, that like basically I just wanted to know that am I credible enough to kind of like me changing that thing, or I'm just kind of like somebody just thinking about just flashy stuff and things and that. Okay, yeah. And by the way, even if I'm not became that particular person, it's not like my purpose is not to kind of like become that particular person. My purpose is to kind of like somebody provide as much as better education as much as it possible. That's it. Okay, yeah. If I would become that particular person as a minister of education, then I would have power, then I would execute that much thing. Okay, but at the moment I'm not actually thinking about that. I'm thinking about asking this question to myself so that I would understand that am I credible enough or not. Okay, and that's why I'm actually asking this question to myself. Alright, now let's just jump back to the question. Now the question is a kind of like a way much difficult, but still again I mentioned the question is, where do my reform priority risk privileging visible announcement over a deep systematic transformation, and how will I guard against the policy theater in Indian education system? let me kind of like explain this question in simple language. Okay, by the way, this question is not a one question. It's a kind of like this question is a combination of multiple question. Okay, now the first question, like there are kind of like a bunch of question are here. First question, what are the visible announcement? Okay, now what is actually visible announcement? Visible announcement means like that ki these are the flashy changes that look great in a newspaper or social media post. Example, like distributing 10,000 tablets to the student. Why is it risk? It looks progress, but there is no internet, there is no teacher, don't know how to use it, so the tablet just sit on the box and just being a kind of like a simply visible win that doesn't actually help child to learn. Like this is kind of like a really good, like a basically this thing na ki okay, I wanted to implement the education system much more better and things and that, but before I wanted to change that entire thing, I have to be asked this question that ki whatever the changes that I will gonna do, is that actually happen? Like basically this thing na ki I don't want that ki my kind of like a some implementation regarding about Indian education system are just became a kind of like a simply the newspaper headline and that's it. Okay, yeah, because like basically this thing na I wanted to change, and that change comes from the foundation. Okay, yeah, so I have to be kind of like a so make sure that ki are my visible kind of like a some visible announcement are actually legitly working. But let's just ask this question, what is exactly my visible announcement, and if I wanted to kind of like implement my things on Indian education system, then how it should supposed to be. Okay, first of all, let's talk about visible announcement. What is exactly that you want to change? Okay, first of all is that ki I wanted to change the kind of like assembly, just like everything. Yeah, literally just I just wanted to change everything. Okay, why are you kind of like changing everything? Okay, yeah, why not you kind of like try to do this thing step by step? Okay, I wanted to do the step by step, but still is this thing na ki I wanted to change everything. Okay, no, like basically it's not a kind of like a flashy thing, it's not kind of like a things that I'm kind of like a doing saying this thing for show off and things and that. Okay, and okay, let me kind of like a tell me my plan. Okay, then I will tell you how do I supposed to be execute and things and that. Okay, so basically this thing, my plan name is a Gurukul program. Okay, so in the Gurukul program, what is actually happened, till the 5th standard students are actually teach by the typical way of teaching. Okay, like a basically this thing, teacher are kind of like a teaching them a basic education regarding about reading, writing, what is 1 plus 1, what is a 3 plus 2. Yeah, I want that a kind of like a basic education till the 4th standard. Okay, so that as a kind of like a student should supposed to be teach. Okay, should supposed to be get the kind of like a basic education things and that. Now since the 5th standard, Gurukul program will kind of like implement on every children on the entire country. Now how this will actually happen, how is kind of like executed? So basically is this thing na ki when that particular person enroll in the Gurukul program, what will gonna happen is that ki that particular student will be into the Gurukul, means like that ki there is no kind of like something is this thing that ki you go to the school and you come back, like it's not like basically it's a kind of like a hostel. Okay, you went to the school and you will kind of like stay there, live there. Okay, maybe in the weekend you kind of like come home to your come home with your parents and things and that. Okay, but I wanted that ki children should supposed to be stay in the Gurukul, stay in the hostel. Like a Gurukul means like that hostel teaching everything in the one place. That is called Gurukul. Okay, yeah. But why? Why are you not letting children to like why are you doing this thing? Why is that? Okay, yeah. Multiple reason. First reason is that कि basically this thing, I want children are grown by themselves. Like let me kind of like tell you, I'm living in kind of like such a era where children are very much pampered by their parents. Yeah, and when I will gonna launch this program, obviously after 20 year, this might kind of like take even more. Okay, yeah, parents are kind of like take so much amount of pampered and things and that. Also, parents are not really good at parenting. Why? Because parents are always busy regarding about their work and things and that, and obviously after 20 year, God knows what will gonna happen. Okay, yeah. So parents are not able to be focused on their children every single time regarding about their job and things and that. Okay, yeah. I'm taking about as an average point of perspective. Okay, that every parents have a kind of like some certain things and they might not focus on their children. Now basically this thing na कि at the beginning means like that कि when the children are at the age of kind of like assembly 10 or 11 age or things and that, it's a very essential kind of like a something crucial age to kind of like a nourishment and things and that. Now nourishment means like that what kind of like a somebody that diet that they took and things and that they will gonna manage by the parents. But the one of the really essential thing that children should supposed to be learn by kind of like a grow together, like having such a people who are with them, they will understand together. Like basically what is actually happened now. Okay, our behavior is actually changed according to the person that we live, right? Yeah, basically is this thing, children are acted very differently in front of the parents. Children acted very differently in front of their friends. Yeah, literally that is true. Yes, and I want that children are grown is because is surrounded by their own kind. Own kind means own friends and things and that. They leave the hostel. Okay, when they leave the hostel, like in the Gurukul they have kind of like a hostel. In the hostel they have to do it by themselves. They have to kind of like wake up, they kind of like do their homework. They would kind of like somebody that key, they would kind of like somebody clean up their clothes, fold their clothes, kind of like they went to the go to the mess, they will kind of like eat whatever stuff, they will clean their kind of like simply the dishes they will put there. Like basically is this thing na कि I want that every children should supposed to be do this thing by themselves. Okay, yeah. Okay, and how is actually happened by kind of like when everyone are kind of like doing this thing, then children are kind of like do the same thing. Okay, yeah. So this will gonna happen so that they will kind of like somebody get the every student will kind of like get that thing that key if we wanted to live, we have to do these things by themselves. And these are kind of like a foundation are implement since the age of 10. Okay, yeah. For male, for the kind of like a male student, for the female student, everyone. Okay, everyone. Okay, as well as I will kind of like provide as much as nourishment, like regarding about food and things and that. Okay, yeah, like this is very much essential. Also another thing, because of all those kids are kind of like living together, so that means there is no travel at all. Like basically in the Gurukul compound there is a hostel, there is a kind of like a mess, there is a school. You have to kind of like do everything in that compound. Also there is a kind of like a playground and things and that. Okay, yeah. So most of the time children are kind of like simply live with themselves, live with each other, and they will kind of like create stronger bond with their own kind, with their kind of like friends and things and that, and they will understand that how should we supposed to live the life. Okay, yeah, since the early age of their life. Okay, as well as is this thing, when the kind of like a student are live in the Gurukul, I have a full control regarding about how do I supposed to be control their time. Means like that, in the morning I will kind of like do the teaching. Okay, yeah, regarding about what kind of like supposed to be teach and things and that. Okay, I will talk separately regarding about teaching. I will gonna talk about other things. Okay, because teaching is a kind of like a bit more different. I will talk about first other thing. Okay, yeah. Since all those kind of like a student, let's just say kind of like a 500 people, sorry, 500 students are kind of like in the Gurukul. So that means na those kind of like a 500 student will kind of like a stay together, they will live together, they will understand together how the life should supposed to be lived, regarding about like a basically this thing we should supposed to fold our kind of like a clothes, kind of like a make our bed. Okay, things and that. Obviously some student or some kind of like a kids might be kind of like a creepy, messy or things and that, but that is a life is not always be kind of like a right. It's kind of like a things that now we kind of like a simply learn to live with that thing. Okay, sometimes we just compromise in that. Okay, another thing is that since those students are kind of like spending almost like an entire time in the Gurukul, I will kind of like control their time. I wanted to make sure that all those kind of like a student in the Gurukul program, means in the Gurukul, they will kind of like simply have exercise, they will kind of like play games. Okay, yeah, let me tell you one thing. The growth of the human brain is actually comes from the exercise too. Okay, like basically reading a book is a one thing, and also exercising is also important thing. Like both are responsible for kind of like a building better brain, better body and things and that, because brain and body are kind of like a connected to each other. I wanted every children should supposed to be have a kind of like some sort of activity in sports. Okay, yeah. I wanted to they should supposed to be play cricket or badminton or whatever the sports. Okay, yeah, whatever the sports are actually available. Also, I wanted that key coach should supposed to be there, and coach should supposed to be coach them regarding about their sports and things and that. Okay, when this thing actually happened, in the 500 people, some of the kind of like in the 500 students, some of the students are kind of like a really good at some certain sports. It will kind of like a create the new opportunity for that particular student, so that opportunity will kind of like a creates a new door in that sports. That student will kind of like a become a kind of like a cricketer or footballer or things and that. Okay, yeah. So I wanted to understand that those 500 students in the Gurukul program, are they kind of like a really good at sports and things and that. If they are not really good at sports, doesn't really matter. I will kind of like let them perform a kind of like a play, cricket, sports, any kind of like a thing. Should supposed to be kind of like a play together things. Yeah, male female student both are together. Okay, I don't want to be kind of like a difference in between, nothing really at all. Okay, yeah. Now because I am kind of like controlling their time, I will kind of like make sure that they would have library, they would kind of like a study and things and that. All obviously there are kind of like a bunch of staff and staff will be there regarding about teaching staff, regarding about kind of like assembly guard things and that. They will kind of like make sure that students should supposed to be have kind of like a safety place where they would kind of like assembly grow everything. Okay, regarding about their human mind, intelligence and things and that. Okay, now let's talk about teaching. Okay, now how Gurukul program actually teach the student. Okay, so basically is this thing, since the kind of like assembly 5th standard, I will kind of like provide them a kind of like assembly a tablet. Okay, tablet would be really good. Okay, now these are tablets are kind of like a one thing for them. Okay, there is a Gurukul application. So in the Gurukul application, they would have to be kind of like do some sort of homework in that application. Now that application is actually designed in a such a way that understand every student, regarding about that student is kind of like a really good at something, or if that particular person is if that particular kind of like a student is actually really good at something, find that excellence, find that thing, kind of like giving them proper information regarding about his credibility, things and that. So every student will kind of like spend almost like 1 hour, 1.5 hour in that particular application. And in that application, the application will kind of like decide, means Gurukul app will kind of like decide that ki this particular person really required this much amount of information. Like, let me tell you one thing, what exactly happened. In conventional method of teaching, usually the lecture happened. Even if the student are really interested or not, they just have to attend the physics class, they just have to attend the mathematics class and things and that. But what if there are kind of like some student are really not really good at mathematics, or really not good at kind of like a physics and things and that. Okay, then still why still those kind of like a student are kind of like a sitting on those class, because just a conventional way of education system. But my educational system is not like that. I kind of like treated every student differently, literally differently. It's just like that na ki every student have a kind of like a different grasping power regarding about their intention, their kind of like a knowledge, information, excited and things and that. Like some student are really good at mathematics. Okay, so if they are kind of like really good at mathematics, so basically is this thing that na ki select those students. Okay, means like that ki Gurukul application also, there is a teacher are also enrolled in the Gurukul application too. So teacher are also understand that ki okay, these are kind of like some students are kind of like really good at mathematics. So basically teacher kind of like call them out and kind of like take a class for those people who are kind of like really good at mathematics, so that teacher would kind of like give them exact kind of like information that they want and things and that. Okay, yeah. Okay, even if sorry, the teacher is not actually available, the app also have a kind of like a lecturer inbuilt too. So kind of like a student will kind of like take that classes from that too. Okay, sorry, I just had a dinner a lot. Okay, now basically this is the kind of like a things, this is how I kind of like teach them regarding about that, like kind of like find out which student are kind of like really good and not. Okay, yeah. Now regarding about the remaining student, like if the kind of like a remaining student are not really good at mathematics, they are just a kind of like average and things and that. Obviously is this thing that na ki I will find that average people, which kind of like average people have a kind of like a which grasp intensity and things and that. Okay, yeah. So that kind of like assembly is this thing that ki like basically is this thing that my Gurukul application will kind of like a filtered out people, filtered out student regarding about their credibility, their talent, their kind of like a things, and kind of like assembly giving direction towards that. Okay, yeah. Also Gurukul doesn't really have just one subject. No, it has a multiple subjects: science, mathematics, social science, multiple things. Okay, yeah. Application will kind of like determine that ki okay, this particular person have this credibility and things and that. But how does application will gonna know that ki student credibility is kind of like known by the kind of like a student are kind of like spending almost like a 1.5 hour on that application to solve those kind of like assembly problems and things. Like basically is this thing, solving a problem on that application is their homework for every day. Okay, yeah. And that is a way that kind of like a system will find out, my application will find out that key okay, which particular person is kind of like really good and not. And regarding about the information, that information actually share to the teachers. Okay, yeah, as well as the system. Okay, yeah. And teacher will kind of like somebody kind of like a create a event or create a kind of like a lecture, so that kind of like invited such a student who are kind of like really good at something or not. Like every student are kind of like a really good at something. Okay, yeah. It's not really that ki kind of like every student is not really good at something. Every student are really good at something. Yeah, like this is what kind of like a system is kind of like a find such a student who are kind of like a which good at something or not and things and that. Okay, because not every student are kind of like a really good at everything. Definitely not. Conventional way of method teaching, this is a kind of like a more focus on that thing. But my teaching of method is not. Obviously is the basic information of knowing stuff is I will also giving to them, like regarding our basic education means like that ki reading, writing, financial education, sex education, kind of like some this thing that ki personal development. These are the basic education I will gonna provide. But if the one particular student who are kind of like really good at, let's just say, history, then probably my system will kind of like a push towards to more learn about history and things and that, because this particular person is kind of like a really good. basically it's this thing na ki my system will kind of like a try to find the excellence since the beginning of the fifth standard and things like that. Okay, now my system till 12th standard, okay, means fifth standard, okay, and there is no standard at all. I'm just kind of like telling the standard and things and that, but there is no standard at all, nothing really at all, it's not. And also my education system will not gonna stop, nothing really at all. Okay, yeah, it always be till the lifetime. Like there is no graduation, there is no kind of like a thing that you should supposed to be stop the education and things and that. No, nothing really at all. I'm gonna tell you, okay, how is that actually happen. Okay, yeah. So basically this thing, this is a kind of like a somebody Gurukul, and every student from 5th standard to 12th standard will be there. Okay, and also there is no exam at all, there is no exam, there is no unit test, there is nothing really at all. Just every student have to be kind of like somebody do this kind of like a homework every single day, be consistent and be persistent, that's it. Because the growth comes from the consistent. I wanted that key students should supposed to be get consistent every day. They kind of like a wake up, they have to do this thing. Because let me tell you one thing now, being consistent regarding about what they will gonna do, that consistency kind of like a compound in one day, and it will kind of like a implement in much more better. Like a basically this is like a conventional way of method of conventional method of education is kind of like a focus on just a kind of like a impact, like a how much you kind of like a put the impact on kind of like a exam and things and that, and the kind of like a credibility that you define on the exam. But I don't want that. I wanted that key student credibility is actually defined by their consistent and persistent and things and that. Also Gurukul provide a kind of like assembly counselor. Oh yeah, counselor is a kind of like a very much essential for every student. Every student is not good at something. Obviously some student are not doing exam, some student are kind of like assembly have kind of like a mental unclarity and things like that. Like basically what is actually happened na, like till the kind of like assembly 4th standard, means like till the age of 10 they are kind of like a living with their parents. But suddenly they are kind of like assembly at the age of 11 they are kind of like a living with all those kind of like assembly students and things and that. Obviously at that age kind of like assembly the students are not really kind of like a like adjust themselves with the living with other students and things and that. Okay, yeah. So counselor are kind of like a help them regarding about things and that. At the beginning they might not kind of like assembly perform really well because they are not really good and things like that, but after some sort of time they have to be kind of like assembly very essential. They will learn to live with those people. Okay, yeah. Obviously there are so many things will gonna happen to, like maybe kind of like a some sort of kind of like a student might gonna do some sort of stupid things and that. For that particular thing counselor will gonna help and things and that. Okay, obviously parents involvement will also be there too. Okay, like basically if the kind of like a student did something wrong and things and that, obviously parents will gonna call, parents will gonna kind of like a came and they will kind of like a talk and things like that. Okay, also is this thing now, my Gurukul program is does not kind of like a separate child from their parents, nothing really at all. Even if the kind of like a children wanted to kind of like a decided that he will kind of like a, they will kind of like a spend the kind of like a time with their parents, they will. Also parents wanted that his child should supposed to spend little bit time with that thing, they will, but not literally every time. Why not? Because of that it's a development. Because let me tell you one thing now, parents, like if the children are live with their parents, then children are kind of like lost one thing. And what is that thing? Communication, a friendliness. Obviously children will not gonna talk with their parents all the time. Why? Because there is a kind of like a boundary between kind of like a parents and children and things and that. So this is what it is. Okay, yeah. Like I wanted that key in the weekend you could take your child at your home and kind of like spend the time, but till the Monday you have to kind of like bring your child into the Gurukul. And yeah, because the development will gonna happen when that child is kind of like a live with that kind of like assembly, live with that kind of like assembly their own kind. But another question actually arise that ki what if the children are kind of like a living with their kind of like assembly other children and things and that, what if they would kind of like assembly not have any kind of like a feeling with their parents, or they may be kind of like consider that ki parents are not really important in their life. Yeah, so what will gonna happen? Okay, let me tell you one thing. Important is not about that ki how good is the relationship between the parents and child and things and that and that. It's the question is about that ki the future of their child, what it should supposed to be. Do you really think that ki parents would be all their like a kind of like a live with their children for rest of the lifetime? Like basically, do you think that ki parents would kind of like assembly always be there in the kind of like a children every decision and things and that and that? No, definitely not. Okay, yeah, it's a very essential to understand that ki this is a kind of like a your child, and your child is kind of like a growing, going to the gurukul and things and that is a part of his destiny and things and that. Obviously it might gonna hurt at the beginning, but it is best for the parents as well as is best for the student too. And obviously this thing in this particular process, there is no kind of like a simply reduce the relationship between the as a child to parents, no, nothing really at all. Okay, I'm not kind of like somebody taking your children to away from this and that, no, nothing really at all. I just wanted to be kind of like somebody that ki children should supposed to be get to understand regarding about how life messy was that, because parents would be always giving the pamper and things and that. It is true, it is definitely true. Yeah, or parents will kind of like somebody, but parents like children shouldn't supposed to be live with their parents till the fourth standard, okay, but after that, no, children should supposed to live with their own kind, so that their personal development growth, they will understand their mentality and things and that. Okay, right? So this is very much essential. Now another question I have to be asked. Okay, what will gonna happen after the 12th standard? Okay, they have to go to the kind of like a college. Okay, and now basically this thing in the college, bunch of college are kind of like a focus on exams and things and that. Then what will gonna happen? Like basically is this thing, the student didn't really kind of like did any kind of like exam for rest of the lifetime. Now suddenly in the college they have to kind of like give the exams and things and that. Will those students are kind of like prepared for exam that and that? Well, okay, let me kind of like so basically is this thing na ki this is the kind of like some things that I am completely unaware of that, or I'm not really sure about this thing. Okay, because if I wanted to reform all the kind of like education system, then basically is this thing na I have to be kind of like a reform the kind of like assembly college education system too. Okay, means the student who will kind of like assembly complete their like basically is this thing as a government are kind of like assembly making sure that ki children should supposed to be get the education till the 12th standard. Okay, but I think that na ki Indian government should supposed to be focus on the education till the graduation. Okay, why am I kind of like thinking like that? Like why am I kind of like assembly taking the burden of why am I kind of like assembly taking the every student burden in the Indian education department? Okay, there is a lot of kind of like a cost that I'm paying, like a gurukul, spending the kind of like a food things, salary, lot of that. Okay, so that is not really good na. Okay, and obviously is this thing that revenue will not gonna come, like basically is this thing na ki like spending that much amount of money in education, like I'm spending too much. Like literally I am not kind of like I'm not kind of like giving student to go to their homes and things and that. I am paying money for their food, their kind of like a stay, everything. For every student in India, like there are millions of them. Okay, so there might be kind of like so much money that I'm spending. So why am I kind of like simply spending even more? Like after the 12th, why I'm kind of like simply wanted to kind of like simply go to the graduation till the graduation? Why do I wanted to control that thing? Okay, I'm not actually controlling, but let me kind of like give you. Okay, I think okay that key these are students are not liability. That is the one thing that I have to be kind of like tell you from every possible point of perspective is this thing that ki like a Indian government shouldn't supposed to be considered as a kind of like a somebody Indian education system is a kind of like a somebody helping student to kind of like a somebody learn and things and that till the 12th standard. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing na ki most of the kind of like most of the countries, they are kind of like giving the free education till the 12th standard. Okay, yeah, like till the 12th standard, like a higher education things and that. College should supposed to be college education should supposed to be do it by themselves, like the students are kind of like somebody pay their own fees for the college and things like that. Government are not helping them to kind of like go spending the things on college and things and that, because college is considered as a kind of like a very higher study and things and that. Government shouldn't supposed to be kind of like interfere regarding about that. But why am I kind of like interfering? Why am I kind of like things? Is this thing, let me kind of like tell you. Oh yeah, I am not consider those student as a liability. I'm consider those student as an asset. Okay, asset. Yeah, literally I'm kind of like consider as an asset. I want it that ki if I have a control of their time, okay, yeah, till the 5th standard, till the education, till the graduation means 15th, okay, yeah, I would kind of like make them much more better person in so many ways regarding what they do, what they good at, what they not, and things and that. Because I have my system, I have rely on my system. My system will kind of like extract the entire information regarding about their students and things and that. When I have that entire information and things, okay, yeah, so that basically is this thing na ki I would kind of like simply like basically is this thing na ki let's take a kind of like a simple explanation regarding about what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, let's just say I implement this Gurukul program. Okay, yeah, and there are almost like maybe 200 million students in India. 200 million students are actually kind of like somebody enroll in Gurukul program and things and that. Okay, yeah. Now basically is this thing that ki I am kind of like controlling their entire life till the 12th standard. Okay, till the 12th standard, and after that 12th standard I would understand that ki how good is that particular person and things and that. Now basically is this thing, it is my responsibility to talk to the kind of like somebody college institute, college dean or college administration that ki make sure that ki your college are act like basically is this thing na ki your institute will work under my Gurukul program. Okay, yeah, your institute will gonna work under my Gurukul program. Means like Gurukul program will kind of like instruct you regarding about student, how should you supposed to be teach. I will kind of like give you the step-by-step guidance regarding about who are those students, what kind of like some education that I'm providing, things like that. So will kind of like somebody you have a kind of like a complete protocol regarding about how should you supposed to provide the education. Okay, yeah, as well as kind of like let's just think that na ki I will control everything. I means like that ki Gurukul program will control everything. You just have to act it upon it. Okay, yeah. So this is the kind of like things that I want. That is a kind of like a very bold statement. Yeah, like you are kind of like controlling every kind of like somebody the college and things and that. But I think that now this is the kind of like a stuff that I wanted to do. Why? Is because of that na ki I wanted students should supposed to be teach, learn for rest of the lifetime. Like basically after the college, what we're gonna do? They just kind of like somebody just stop educating or just stop doing education? No, nothing really at all. I have to give them purpose that ki if they continue improving themselves, if they continue doing their homework in their application, in their Gurukul apps, okay, yeah, the Gurukul will kind of like somebody find like a fine tune regarding about your everything, how good is you are and things and that. Obviously your score are publicly available too. So publicly available means like that how good is you are, like if you are consistent throughout all those years and things and that, and if you are kind of like a score increase, you have a higher chances that you would kind of like a hire by the multiple companies or big company like a Nvidia or maybe kind of like a Intel or maybe Facebook or Google or things like that. You will kind of like a get really higher growth and things like that, because your score is kind of like a something determined by the Gurukul, because in the Gurukul program you are kind of like a doing this homework till the 5th standard. Okay, yeah. So your resume is kind of like a build since the 5th standard. Gurukul will kind of like a provide you entire thing that you did from last decade and things and that. Like a basically typical resume is kind of like a piece of paper that you did this thing, you did that, and you did that. But that's just not kind of like a credible information regarding about the student. But the Gurukul program kind of like a give you entire information regarding about you to the kind of like a higher authorities and things and that, so that they will kind of like find the perfect talent and they will kind of like hire you. Okay, yeah. As well as what I'm trying to tell you is this thing. Let's take a kind of like a some simple example. I am a kind of like a simply entrepreneur. I am a kind of like a chairman of company from Nashik city. Okay, yeah. And I need a kind of like a such a student who are kind of like a really good at mathematics. Now, basically, if I wanted to hire those such a student really good at mathematics, might be how do I supposed to find that talent? Kind of like a go to the Naukri.com or kind of like a go to the Monster.com and kind of like a enroll that I need these students and things and that. But how do you define their kind of like a credibility? You have to do an exam and things and that. But let's just think that exam is a kind of like a very much bitter way to things, because in the exam student might gonna perform well or some student might not. And also there's not really good thing, because if you try to do a exam, you also have a kind of like a lot of kind of like a student spend a lot of money regarding about exams and things and that. But what if I'm kind of like a providing you the entire information regarding about, because there are almost like hundreds of millions of students are actually enrolled in the Gurukul program. So that means I have the kind of like assembly in your city, means Nashik city. I have kind of like assembly almost like a 300 students are really good at mathematics. I will kind of like give you the entire catalog of 300 people who are really good at mathematics. Okay, yeah. And you also kind of like get that those 300 students, how those 300 students are really good, what kind of like a stuff that they did, what kind of like a things and that. If you kind of like somebody tell your job profile in Gurukul program will kind of like find the exact talent that you really required, which is kind of like really close to you, so that talent will shouldn't supposed to be kind of like a good than a city and things and that talent means that kind of like a candidate is from your city. He will kind of like a work for you, and as well as he will come back home and kind of like spend the rest of the life with his families and own and things and that. So this is a kind of like a some things that I want, a kind of like a network that Gurukul will not only kind of like a simply build the talent, improve the talent to the student, but as well as it will kind of like a create the placement for the student, and as well as the company will kind of like a hire the better talent, because in the Gurukul program we have kind of like a millions of that. Okay, yeah, like hundreds of million. Now this is the one thing. Another thing is that I kind of like telling you this thing that I am consider my student is not a liability. I'm considering my student is an asset. So what does it means? It means that now let me kind of like tell you, I will have power, means like that government, Indian government will gonna have power that within a next 20 year, what kind of like a citizen do I really require? Let's just say that another 10 year, like another decade, I need a kind of like a doctor, lot of doctor. I like basically Indian government decided that we need a kind of like a more doctor. So how do we supposed to do that? Indian government will come to the Indian education system. They will gonna say this thing that we need a kind of like a doctor more. So basically Gurukul program will kind of like a pushing people towards the medical stuff. Okay, yeah. So that within a kind of like a decade, we might have kind of like an entire army of kind of like a doctors and things and that. So basically is this thing na ki we are not bound to find a kind of like a doctor from some other countries and things and that. We kind of like a push our student. Like basically is this, it's a kind of like a thing that na ki whatever the future do we really require, we just kind of like build it from today, and that future will kind of like implement after 20 years. This is what it is. Like basically is this thing na ki if the Indian government really required a kind of like a somebody really good at STEM students. STEM means like a science, technology, math and engineering. Like we need a kind of like that particular student who really good at STEM subjects. Okay, so the kind of like a Gurukul push the student towards the kind of like a STEM subjects. And obviously within a 20-year you will get the entire army of STEM subjects people, and they are kind of like a push the Indian education or Indian kind of like a infrastructure, or Indian companies are pushing themselves even more better and things and that. Do you get it? Okay, yeah. Basically this thing, conventional method of education system are just kind of like a giving the education, but my education system is not like that. My education system is kind of like a making their student as an asset, not only for the student but as well as kind of like a recruiter and things and that. In the future jobs are very less. Okay, yeah, and finding a right talent are kind of like a very essential for the companies and things like that. How they will gonna find that right talent? From the CV, from the exam? No, it does not, because even after you find that particular talent, that talent might not gonna work, because still is this thing, you just kind of like somebody define their credibility from couple of exams and interviews and things and that. It's not. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this saying nana ki you need a kind of like a particular person who really good at AI, really good at things and that. As also is this thing that now you want your candidate actually from your local city, so that you shouldn't pay that much amount of hefty salaries and things and that. So basically it's convenient for the every kind of like a somebody, every chairman or every kind of like a company, so that they will kind of like a get the candidates in the local city, so that they would kind of like a better things and that. So this is my entire Gurukul program. And also is this thing, my Gurukul program doesn't end even after that particular candidate will get a job in kind of like a even more big. That particular candidate, if that candidate kind of like spending every single hour or maybe every single half an hour, whatever the time that he spend on Gurukul program, he increase score every single day, because he has been consistent enough. And because of his kind of like a score improvement every single day, obviously he is growing, and he is growing, that means the scoreboard is actually increasing, and he would also get the kind of like another kind of like a assembly call for another company which kind of like a hire them bigger salaries and things and that. So basically growth never gonna stop, education never stop. Like even after that particular person after the graduate, that particular person never stop. Education is not meant to be stopped. It is not like a conventional way of education is kind of like a meant to be stopped after the graduation, but that is completely wrong na. Why we are like why is that thing? Definitely not. Okay, so this is what it is. This is my kind of like an entire Gurukul program and things and that. I know it's kind of like a bit more flashy and things, but I know it's kind of like it's very essential and things. But another thing, I have to be asked this question to myself. It's been almost like a 47 minute I'm talking about this thing, and I'm not even talk about the kind of like a question and things and that. Okay, so the question is, what is exactly my visible announcement? My visible announcement are that I already mentioned regarding about this and that. Okay, now second question is that what is a deep systematic transformation? Deep systematic transformation means like that ki basically is this thing that now the work that you wanted to do, will it gonna happen? Like will it exactly happen? Like basically is this thing that na it's not a kind of like a somebody kind of like a somebody news in a front page. I wanted that it should supposed to be implement in the real life. So will it gonna happen? Will that education, will that kind of like a Gurukul will gonna implement in the real life? It will. Okay, will it be implemented in the rural area, things and that? It will. Okay, let me kind of like tell you. Okay, every Gurukul means what? A Gurukul means a place where it has a hostel, boys hostel, girls hostel, okay, a school, a library, a mess, and kind of like a playground, and a bunch of essential thing, kind of like somebody that ki a community area, or another thing is that ki a kind of like a place they would hang out and things like that. It's a kind of like an entire Gurukul. the size of the Gurukul is a 500, means like that capacity of each Gurukul is a 500 student. Okay, obviously not completely 500, maybe like 400 something student will be there too, and they will kind of like live day and night and things and that and that. Now another question actually arises that in the rural area, obviously is this thing that I will not gonna find the entire strength of 500 people in the village area. If I found that, then I will be kind of like a developed Gurukul over there. But obviously is this thing that village are kind of like a bit more smaller and things and that and that. So basically is this thing, the people who are from rural area, they will kind of like a shifted to the such a Gurukul which is kind of like a nearby to the thing, so that 500 students will kind of like a live there and things and that. Now why am I kind of like a things like basically is this thing that when I have all those kind of like a 500 people in the Gurukul, I would control more if the student are kind of like a went to the parents and things and that, my Gurukul program will not gonna control them. I wanted to control their time, so that I would supposed to be implement in their much more better way. Okay, yeah, things and that. Okay, but there is also another question actually arises that what if the student wants to learn something very differently? Differently means what? Like let's just say that a kind of like such a student wanted to learn the music. My Gurukul program have a music lesson too. Okay, yeah, it's not really that I'm kind of like stopping. My Gurukul program kind of like a teaching any subject that he want. Any subject, yeah. He want like a drawing, teaching, singing, whatever it is. Okay, yeah. But what if like some student parents are not allow them to the Gurukul, then what? Obviously some parents will be. Okay, yeah. So if some parents are not allow students to go to the Gurukul, then probably is this thing that yeah, they have to kind of like do the application and things and that, all the documentation. Okay, yeah. And probably is this thing that their parents will kind of like take care of their child. Obviously that children will kind of like come to the school every morning, kind of like do the school, and they will kind of like went home. But also I don't want it to be, yeah, because is this thing that's not really good thing. Okay, yeah, because he is a kind of like a going home, and rest of the student are actually kind of like simply in the Gurukul, and rest of the student are kind of like enjoying and things and that particular person is actually going to the home will not gonna feel really good. He feel like that he wanted to stay in the Gurukul and things and that. So basically this thing, it will kind of like create a wrong impression on his mind and things and that, because he will not go to the home, and basically just like that he would kind of like feel like claustrophobic and things and that, because the parents are not really allow them. So in this particular context, I don't know, I have to figure it out something regarding about that. I'm not really sure about that. Obviously some parents might not allow their children should supposed to be stay in the Gurukul, but it is essential. Children should supposed to be stay in the Gurukul. Okay, now regarding about some students are kind of like from the village area, so they will kind of like go into the nearest Gurukul. Okay, yeah, so that 500 student will kind of like somebody vacancy will gonna done, and they will kind of like some stay there and things and that. Okay, yeah, so this is what it is. Okay, yeah. Now will it be implement? Now implementation is a bit more difficult. Why is difficult? Why do you think that? Obviously it's difficult. Okay, yeah. I wanted to implement stage by stage. Okay, yeah. Now basically this thing at the moment I'm not really sure about how do I supposed to implement. I wanted to implement, but it should supposed to be stage by stage, because first of all is that I will control the student life till the 12th standard. After the 12th standard, college and things, I have to be kind of like a talk to them. Like basically it's a thing that basically let the Gurukul program run over on your college and institute and things and that. So that basically Gurukul will kind of like give the instruction regarding about the student, how they kind of like really good and things and that. Okay. But that is a kind of like a bit more convincing, because every private institute and things and that I have to be convince them, and that is a kind of like a biggest problem. Because of that na ki if they didn't really convince and they kind of like created their own kind of like a program like Gurukul and things and that for the college and things, then what will gonna happen that ki multiples of kind of like a program will gonna happen. Okay, yeah, like multiples of apps and things and that creates the competition. Okay, yeah, and after that the student will kind of like overwhelmed regarding about that key which program is kind of like a really good and things and that. Now same story will gonna happen like today, like basically which college is actually good and things and that. In the next future might gonna happen which program is kind of like really good and things and that. So basically this thing I wanted that key one program will kind of like a implement in everywhere, in the school, in the college and things and that. If I have, then probably one program will control everything regarding about every students in entire India. Okay, yeah. So basically is this thing, it will kind of like a very much convenient for Indian government to manipulate the student. Like manipulate is kind of like a very big word, but still is this thing that na ki Indian government will gonna control regarding about their next generation, what will they are equipped with, what kind of like some talent they are born with, or what kind of like a talent that we want, a government want. So basically they will kind of like a simply manipulate and things and that so that kind of like a army of those kind of like a student will kind of like a come up in next 20 year, and they will kind of like a simply add so much amount of value in Indian economy and things and that. Okay, yeah. But dude, like is it wrong like basically controlling their things and that? Well, okay, that's a very valid question, but important thing is that na ki let me kind of like give you, okay, yeah, what is exactly education. Like I wanted to provide the education. Okay, I wanted to provide the education. I'm spending that much amount of money and things and all that. I am not taking any kind of like a money from student, nothing really at all. Okay, yeah. So I am not doing this for free. Like government is not doing this for free. Government wants something in return, na. Okay, right? Government wants something written. If the government, like if the Indian education system is actually providing all those things, money, food, leave, they are not asking for any kind of like a money for their parents, nothing really at all. Okay, yeah. So government want in return something, and that in return something what? They would want control. When they have a control of the millions of students, they will kind of like a simply understand that key after the next generation what kind of like a students or what kind of like a citizen that we want. Okay, yeah, regarding about their needs and things, so would they would kind of like a plan regarding about their entire economy, their entire infrastructure. Like basically this thing, once they kind of like a predict regarding about what will they gonna come, they will kind of like a making sure, and they will kind of like a implement the new policies and things and that. Okay, yeah. And basically is this thing that na ki how does kind of like a government will gonna get the money from the student? Because of the control, those students will kind of like a provide the value in the Indian economic system, Indian economics. Okay, in the economy they will kind of like a simply provide something about values and things and that. They would kind of like a making Indian infrastructure or Indian companies are kind of like a much more stronger, and things, startup culture will gonna improve. Because of the startup culture, the kind of like a demand is increase, supply is increase, things and that. Okay, this kind of like entire wheel will gonna happen. Okay, yeah, Indian education system is kind of like a simply giving a kind of like a prediction regarding about what will gonna happen in the next 20 year, and basically government will kind of like a simply plan according to the policy regarding about that. They would know that ki what kind of like a somebody credibility that we have, what kind of like a students that we have, and what kind of like a somebody ambition mission that we supposed to be execute in the next further future. So this is a want. That's why kind of like a Indian government wanted to kind of like spend that much amount of money, and they will not gonna take any kind of like a money from the student, because those are asset, not a liability. Those are asset. Government will gonna earn money in the future after 20 year or after that. So this is what it is. Okay, yeah. So will it, the question is actually simple, will it be implemented in the ground reality? It will. Okay, yeah, okay, it might be a problem. It's not only that, basically, let's just say almost like a kind of like a somebody taking a responsibility of 500 million people, 500 million students in India. That's a very big task, literally very 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 big task. Okay, yeah, but I wanted to implement by step. Okay, yeah. First of all, I have to be convinced to the kind of like assembly all the kind of like assembly college and things and institute and things and that, so that they would supposed to be implement, they would supposed to be act according to the guidelines of the Gurukul program. Okay, yeah, they will kind of like provide the teaching as they were kind of like doing, but the Gurukul will kind of like telling them, Gurukul program will kind of like telling them that which student are kind of like really good, which student are you supposed to provide which kind of like education and things and that. A kind of like assembly Gurukul program are kind of like meant to be find the excellence in one thing. Okay, yeah, and that is the kind of like things that I want. It's not a kind of like assembly is this thing throwing the kind of like assembly stone in a kind of like assembly hoping for I am hitting at the aim. No, it's not. A kind of like assembly a Gurukul program will kind of like a creating a kind of like assembly giving a binocular so that you would kind of like hit the target very precisely, so that you would kind of like make your talent as much as better, as much excellence and things and that. Convincing those students and convincing those college and institution things, this is a kind of like a big thing, but I have to be kind of like assembly make sure that they would supposed to be on our side and things and that, and they would kind of like assembly implement the Gurukul program in their curriculum so that things and that and have happened. Oh god, it's been almost like a 1 hour. I'm kind of like talking. I'm really tired to talk. My mouth is kind of like somebody really tired to talking right now. It's just kind of like talk. The question is not done yet. Okay, yeah. The third question: what is a policy theater? Policy theater means like that kind of like whatever they implement that you are doing, will it gonna implement in the real life, or they just kind of like show business? No, they are not the show business, obviously not. Okay, yeah. Like basically this thing at the time I don't know how do I supposed to be implement. I have this plan regarding about the Gurukul program. Like I was kind of like thinking about this thing for almost like a year, but I never really mentioned this thing in Artifact. But because I kind of like asking those questions, kind of like giving me a kind of like a opportunity to talk. At the moment, I am not really sure how do I supposed to be implement, but I will. Okay, yeah, I'm like basically this is I'm asking this question 20 year ahead before the implementation, because the implementation will gonna happen after 20 year. Okay, yeah, so basically I do have a time. Okay, I will gonna think, but talking about this at the moment will kind of like simply give them heads up regarding about what will gonna come and how do I supposed to be kind of like a problem will gonna face and things and that. Okay, yeah, I am making sure that there is no policy theater. Like basically there is no kind of like somebody just a show business things like that. I just wanted to implement everything, every word that I say it should supposed to be, but still is this thing I have to be kind of like somebody make sure that ki have the kind of like somebody acceptance from the every possible way. Okay, and how to guard it against. Guard it means like that kind of like somebody is this thing that ki how will you stop yourself from choosing the easy and flashy path. Like can you guard against by the measuring the right thing, talking to the last mile, focusing on the foundation. Yeah, I'm actually focusing on the foundation. I'm kind of like focusing towards the last mile and things and that. Yeah, whatever, I'm really tired to talk right now. I just don't want to talk at the moment. I've been actually talking for almost like a 1 hour. My mouth is kind of like just dry at the moment. Okay, yeah, so this is the entire Gurukul program. Okay, don't worry, I will gonna ask almost like hundreds of questions regarding about that, so there's a lot of stuff. Okay, yeah, and I will gonna lot of stuff, and I will also kind of like understand myself regarding about that Gurukul program too, how do I supposed to execute and things like that. But it's a very big step. It's a very very big step. So yeah, so this is it. I should supposed to be end here, and thank you.